So Earth's climate has officially passed the tipping point of 400 parts per million in terms of carbon emissions. So what does that mean? So basically, we're at the point where we've done permanent damage to the planet. So before a few days ago or last year, I think it was last year, there was actually some days where we went over that, but we were actually able to go under that. So this year we hit the what's supposed to be the low point of the year in terms of carbon emissions, and we didn't go under 400. So it seems unlikely that we're going to be going under 400 because no real effort's being done to curb that. We still have, an over reliance on fossil fuels and everything else that goes along with, Western life and, everything else. So we've officially done that permanent damage. So what does this mean? Well, while we've done this damage, that doesn't mean that we're allowed to just lay back and be like, all right, we're screwed anyways, because it can just get worse from here. So we're at 400. The way we're going right now, it adds about two parts per million per year. So that actually it's just going to get worse and worse, and these extreme weather conditions, increasing temperatures, the scarcity of resources, that's all going to get worse. So what are we seeing right now? We're already seeing hundreds of people die in India from overheating. There's water wars already in India, and that's something that's just going to become even more and more of an issue as time goes on, and we do nothing to really stop that. With New Orleans, it's really only a matter of time before something that's worse than Hurricane Katrina hits it, and then that city's underwater. That's wiped off the map. So if you love their Cajun food, you better be going now, because you might not be getting any more of that famous New Orleans Cajun food. And I can tell you, if you haven't gotten it, you're missing something, because it's good. Had it. So we need to be working towards trying to make it so that we can kind of actually get back, not even necessarily get back, because that seems so unlikely at this point, but to make it so that we minimize the damage we've already done. So there are a few things that are against that. So there's obviously the issue with, how oil companies have bought out like 90% of our politicians, potentially more than that. I mean, considering the fact, when I believe it was a Pew study discovered that public opinion correlates 0% to policy that's done in America. So I might have mistaken the source. I believe it was Pew, or if it was public policy polling. I'm not. It's escaping me right now, but that was a study, and so that's obviously impacting this, because it doesn't really matter what we think, because we don't have billions of dollars, and we're not getting millions a year on tax subsidies from the government, because we're not big oil companies. So we need to get money out of politics. We need to make it so that these companies don't have that power, so that we can actually make that push for green energy. The good news is that there's actually certain countries that have been making this push. Germany is about 80% green energy at this point, and there was actually a period, I believe it was last year, that they actually were at 100%, and they actually were paying their population for like an hour to use the energy, because literally all of the energy was being made by renewable energy sources. So it's possible. We've seen that this is a possibility. So we need to work on, the big contributors to greenhouse gases. China and America need to get on that. We did sign the Paris Climate Agreement not that long ago, but the issue is that's actually, even if we followed that, which obviously there's no real guarantee, especially since Trump, if he does become president, has promised to just completely tear it up. Even if we followed that, that's actually not good enough, because the goal that scientists have put forth is it was to keep it below the 1.5 degrees Celsius mark, and that plan actually does it to about 2 degrees. So that's still not optimal. It's better than nothing. Uh, it's way better than nothing. It's a lot better than what we were doing before, but we need to do better than that. We need to keep fighting this fight. So there's stuff that individuals can do too. So, and this is actually coming from a meat eater, so don't think this is some stealth vegan video. But we need to be consuming less meat, because the water consumption, the greenhouse gases, methane, everything that comes from animal agriculture is a big contributor to that. So a plant-based diet does actually have health benefits, obviously. And on top of that, it just requires less resources to make. So I'm not saying that people need to just give up meat, but I think it needs to start being a thought about how much we consume and how we can reduce that and what we can, replace with that. So, unfortunately, all of this seems unlikely. So, what are we going to do in what's seeming like almost an inevitability that this planet just goes out the window? Well, the good news is that we actually have people like Elon Musk, who have recently revealed their plans to colonize Mars, and it was to have at least 1 million people inhabiting it within 50 to 100 years. So stuff like this is things we can also be looking forward to, because potentially technology could advance so fast that maybe we can get off the planet. We could also potentially maybe make it to Proxima B in maybe a coming century, which is supposedly the closest inhabitable planet, though I believe its inhabitability status is still kind of like up for grabs. It just looks like it's inhabitable. But yeah, Proxima B. And I'm interested because I love space travel. I love the idea of it, but it could also be the thing that ends up saving humanity. Uh, in terms of on Earth, though, I'm also curious how technology kind of evolves in terms of maybe, carbon capturing technology, if we can actually end up using technology to turn back some of the damage we've done. From what I'm hearing, it doesn't look like that's very hopeful. It looks like that's unlikely, but it is, with technology advancing as far as it is, no one really knows. So we'll end up seeing, but we need to be acting on the now, because I don't want my grandchildren or even my children to be living in a world that has no water and food prices are like triple what they are now. So, and I want them to be able to see many of the species that are alive today. I mean, there's also how climate change is going to expand ocean dead zones, which are areas in the ocean that have so little oxygen that like almost nothing can live there, and that's expected to just keep growing and growing as time goes on. So this needs to be something that, like Bernie Sanders said, that we treat like a World War II level threat. And I know that this is hard for people to swallow, but I think people need to think for a long minute about where their priorities are, because we're freaking out about terrorism when there's things like the potential extinction of the human species coming right up. Climate change, whether people want to agree or not, is a much bigger threat than terrorism will ever be, because terrorism can never kill it. It can never wipe out the species. So we need to be setting our priorities straight on that, and we need to not be electing presidents who think climate change is a hoax. And it scares me every day to think that we could be going for 4 to 8 more years of not only doing nothing about climate change in America, and I need to remind you, we're the second largest emitter of carbon emissions. China's the first. I think we're 20% of the world and they're 40%. So we need to get on that, and if we have a administration that doesn't even believe it exists. Trump actually appointed a climate denier to his environmental division. And I don't know what's gonna happen within even my lifetime, because we've seen this process get quicker and quicker, so it could very well even become faster than what we currently think it is, because it used to be centuries, now it's getting to be decades, maybe it's within a few decades.